Okay, so we have our first module in purposive communication. First, we have the definition of communication. So that is one of the many definitions of communication. And I want you to remember the etymology of the word communication, which is from Latin communicare, meaning to share or to make ideas common. So, in local fairs or feria, do you know how to play the color game? So, we will play something like that. So, there are colored boxes with one letter each. So, the letter on the box is the starting letter of the word we are looking for. So, the color of the boxes correspond to the color of the box with the letter. Okay? So we have the first box. I will wait for you on the chat to type the word we are looking for. The first box is the orange one with letter S. It means the entity who crafts the message. What is the word we are looking for? It starts with the letter S. Okay, correct. Sender. The next box, letter M, the reason behind any interaction, the meaning. M is for message. Correct. C, it means the means by which a message is conveyed. C is for channel. Correct. The green box R, the entity who obtains the transmitted message. Receiver is correct. The bluish green box, letter F, essential to confirm recipient understanding. F for feedback is correct. The blue box, letter E, the place, the mood, the feeling, the mindset. E for environment is correct. Now we have the light blue box, letter C, expectations and shared understanding. C for context is correct. Now we have the last component of communication, letter I. It means barrier or block, prevents communication to take place. I, what do you think is the word starting with letter I? It means barrier or block, prevents communication to take place. Okay, I for interference is correct. So we have the kinds of interference. A, psychological or thoughts. B, physical. It's the competing stimulus. And letter C, linguistic and cultural. Or the another meaning. D, mechanical are those raised by channels. Now, We have two boxes, one on the left and one on the right. So this will be matching type. There are C's of communication. We have to match them with the words found with the blue box on the right. 9 C's of communication. So the first one is clarity. Which word on the right do you think is associated with clarity? Please type your answers on the chat. Okay? Anyone, please, on the chat? Clarity is for choose the word you associate with clarity on the blue box on the right. Okay? So there are answers on the chat already, but the correct answer is clarity for intelligibility. Okay, someone got it right. Next, we have concreteness. What is the word on the right that you can associate with concreteness? Concreteness is factual evidence. Correct. Let's have the third one. Courtesy. What word on the right, on the blue box, can we associate courtesy? Courtesy. Courtesy is for goodwill. Why do we need to be polite? Because we want to build goodwill through our communication. Next, correctness. Okay, that's correct. Correctness is for grammar. The fifth one, consideration. What word on the right do we associate consideration? Who do we consider when we prepare our communication? Okay, that's correct. Consideration is associated to audience oriented because we think of the audience when we prepare our communication. Next, creativity. Yes, ingenuity is related to creativity. We need to find resourceful ways in order to get our message across. Next, okay, conciseness. Conciseness is for simplicity. That's correct. The eighth one, cultural sensitivity. What do we need to be sensitive about when we communicate with others? Cultural sensitivity means being aware of the gender and race equality. Correct. And the last one, captivating. It means our communication needs to get the attention. Correct. Okay. We will now have our last topic for the first module. These are the ethical considerations in communication. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that focuses on issues of right and wrong in human affairs. Ethical communicators respect audience, consider the result of communication, value truth, use information correctly, and do not falsify information. So, as a part of your daily personal reflection, please think about, are you an ethical communicator? So, after each module, you have a discussion forum to answer. We will find out the questions for the discussion forums after all three modules are discussed. Now, if you need a 1 minute break for a comfort room or for getting food, please do it now. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I hope you're back from the comfort room or grabbing food. We now have the second module. So, our second module begins with the definition of globalization. So, why do we need to know about the connection between globalization and communication? We need to communicate with other nations so we can improve the state of our country. It means that without communication with other countries, we cannot improve or ask help from the other countries. So let's acknowledge first if there are students who are raising their hands. Are we free to move forward with the next topic? Okay. Sheila Sarina, can you share something or do you have to ask a question? Okay. We will get back to Sheila later. Let's have the next topic. Okay. After defining globalization, we now have two definitions of intercultural communication. This term also has a lot of definitions from many researchers and philosophers. So the two most common definitions are from Jant 1998 and Weston Turner 2000. Next, we will discuss the forms of intercultural communication. Before we read on the four forms, kindly think about what is the difference between race and ethnicity. Please type your ideas about it on the chat. Again, what is the difference between race and ethnicity? Let's go back to that later. We have four forms of intercultural communication. The first one is interracial communication, communicating with people from different races. Second, interethnic communication, communicating with people of different ethnic origins. Third, international communication, communicating between representatives from different nations. It's like the UN or United Nations meetings. And fourth, intracultural communication, interacting with members of the same racial or ethnic group or co-culture. So let's check your ideas about the difference between race and ethnicity. So I will wait for half a minute if you want to share about your ideas about the difference between race and ethnicity. Please type it on the chat. So if you forget your own ideas about race and ethnicity, remember that the accepted classification for race are only four. So what are the four races in the world? So for the white, it's Caucasoid. For the black, it's Negroid. And for the yellows, Mongoloids. And from the Pacific or the islanders, it's Australoids. While ethnicity, like what Leah mentioned, ethnicity is more specific because these are small groups in geographical locations. So some theorists share that we should not equate ethnic groups with tribes, but that's just one perspective. We can study ethnic groups in a different way. Next topic is another discussion about forms of communication. So it can be high context or low context. When we say high context, the communication is indirect, while low context, the communication is straightforward. Okay. For those who are not able to finish the session today, it's okay. You can view the session on YouTube. I will just send you the link on our FB group. We have the ways to improve intercultural communication. So we have three ways, and I hope you can apply it in your daily life, especially if you have visitors from other countries or in social media. If you are talking to people from other nations, you should think about the ways to improve intercultural communication. So that is the end of Module 2. We will have the discussion forum questions after Module 3. I'll give you another minute to get water or anything, but please stand by until we finish the lesson and the discussion forum questions. Okay, I hope you got what you needed. Let's have our third module, the last module for today. So let's start with the definition of variety and register. When we say variety, these are language clusters or groups. So in a group, the group can be classified as dialect. When we say dialect, based on geographical or social differences, how will a language become a dialect? Let's take, for example, Filipino is our national language. And this national language, Filipino, is based on the Tagalog language. Tagalog is the language of people from Luzon, Central or South Luzon. So, Tagalog as a language becomes a dialect when it becomes different in different locations, like Tagalog language in Calabarzon. It becomes a dialect because you will see some differences. Tagalog used in Cavite or Laguna, Batangas, Quezon, or Rizal. Again, when a language becomes different or it has differences when used in another geographical location, the language becomes a dialect. Now, we have idiolect. Idiolect is the personal use of the language. It has nuances or idiosyncrasies. It has details that is unique to a person. For example, our President Duterte has this kind of idiolect filled with expletives or unnecessary words because that is the type of language he wants to use that will make him unique from others people. Next, register. It's the level of formality. So generally, it can be informal, neutral, or formal. First, formal. It is professional communication. Informal is casual communication. And finally, neutral communication. is for technical communication. Aside from that, registers can be classified according to Martin-Juice levels of formality. You can read that on your own. I will just give you some examples. First one, if you are able to check a priest's homily or pastor's sermon, rarely change because it is based on the scriptures or the Bible. It barely changes. But there are pieces of communication that do not really change, such as the law, the constitution, the preamble. Okay? Next one, it is likely frozen because the facts are the same throughout the centuries. So what we study in school, like a university lecture or conference paper presentation, is deliberative because the speaker really prepares for it, but it may not be as polished. Third one. So the examples are conversations between a doctor and a patient are consultative. They are talking because they need advice from each other. Aside from the doctor-patient conversation, we have social worker or crime victim. They are consulting with one another on how they can work through the case or how to improve the state of being of the victim. And we have the fourth one. This is the type of conversation you do with friends, colleagues, or relatives. And the last one, the conversation between family, loved ones, and significant others. Aside from the register or levels of formality, there is something that we call domains of language variation. I will let you read that on your own. I will just give examples. The first one, these are the communication that you see on neighborhood posters. Posters like for rent or missing dog. Second, it is the communication among neighbors. Like chismisan nila Aling Marites at ni Aling Chona. The third one are the sites or publication websites of local societies. Like Marikina Mommies for Mayor Marcy. Whatever they post there, it's communication for members of local societies. Number 4. The type of communication here are what you see in neighborhood computer shops. Ito po yun, trash talkan ng mga maaasim na bata na naglalaro sa computer shop. Number 5. These are the international editions of newspapers and magazines. When you read those articles, it is filled with local colloquialisms. Those are unique to a place. Number 6. These are casual interactions between people coming from different parts of the world. So when travelers in an airport talk about where they come from, what they need to do in that country, that is global everyday oral. Number 7, these are the communication you see in international research journal articles. So in contrast to the magazine and newspaper articles, since journal articles are technical, there is no local colloquialisms. And finally, number 8, paper presentations in an international academic conference. When you present a paper in an international academic conference, you are talking about specialized topics in spoken form. So after this topic about domains of language variation, we have the media ages. So that is our final topic for today. So how do we differentiate the first media age and the second media age from each other? So you can read that on your own as well. We just have to remember, during the first media age, those who can afford radio and television are the only ones who can listen to news, which means those people are the only ones who can influence other people based on what they listen to from the news on radio and television. So basically, it's easy to influence mass consciousness. While during the second media age, there is already social media. You just have to be online to receive the news, read it, scroll down. But since social media is easily accessible, there is what you call troll farms. These troll farms work so they can reach targeted group of people who are gullible or easy to budol. Why? Because misinformation pays a lot. So when people are misinformed, they are prone to doing bad things. So when you do bad things, you pay a lot to make those things disappear. So in fact, if your presence on social media endangers you, it becomes harmful for the people you love as well. So, even though the second media age influences individual experience, it can also harm the people you know. So, you have to be careful. So, that will be the end of our lesson. Let's have the discussion forums. This is the first one. For module 1, there is an explanation first before the question. You have to read that. And of course, when you read that informative sentences before the question, think about what you learned from the lesson. So there's only one question for module 1. What will you tell an internet troll or someone who is toxic online to encourage him or her practice ethics on communication? The next one, for module 2, it's a lot shorter. The question is, when you relate to someone online who is ridiculed or mocked, what will you tell the bashers, haters, or bullies? And finally, the third one, you will find a meme or create your own about any of the topics mentioned here. So you can create your own meme or look for memes online about the topics here. So I'll be closing our discussion now. I'll explain other things on how to submit the discussion forum answers on our FB group.